Let's get started now by introducing you to our presenter, Greg Aden. Greg is the owner and founder of Aden Leadership. He is a leadership consultant, executive coach, and works with his team to put on an annual leadership conference called Leadership Development Day. Greg is also a motivational speaker and facilitates groups of various sizes. He is passionate about helping leaders become better leaders by helping them master critical skills like personal accountability, teamwork, and service leadership. Over to you, Greg.
Greta, thank you. Appreciate it. Reven, thank you for helping us today with the presentation of the content. And to all of you, welcome. I can tell you without a doubt, I love this webinar. And the reason is because when we're courageous with our word, we can really get and say to anyone anything. Now, that doesn't mean we're not being kind. It's meaning we're being courageous. And I believe by the end of today's webinar, you're going to have at least 2 or 3 tools that you can use right away. You're going to see the interest and the importance of making shifts. We'll talk about those. And I can guarantee you one thing, your relationships will get better. And those relationships that won't get better because you're being more courageous with your word and leaning into your conversations with more intention, those relationships probably need to be reviewed as to, are they truly important to you anymore? But again, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. I'm a leadership coach. My role in this is to help you understand why you aren't getting the results you want in your conversations, and perhaps why you aren't getting the relationships that you want. But more so to all the leaders out there, buckle in, listen, take some great notes, ask some questions, and I promise you, you'll have something to apply to your leadership ability, your leadership skills, and parents and educators, your leaders, and this will apply to you. So I ask you, why are courageous conversations so important? And why do you think some of these are very, very difficult? Questions for you to answer on your own, but I would tell you that the reason they're difficult is because we don't practice, we don't take them seriously, we believe we are committed to the relationship, we believe we're interested sometimes in the relationship, but are we truly dedicated to the outcome of the conversation? And I have this philosophy, and it's called you play like you practice. I didn't create it, but I've heard it a lot of time from some of the most successful coaches out there, basketball, baseball, football, and all the way back to my junior high days. Meaning how you prepare for something or how you practice for something is a direct indicator on how you're going to play. And let's just take football. As you all know, it's starting tonight, or maybe you don't know. Most of you might think it starts on Sunday. But for months, they've been practicing, they've been preparing for what they say is the most important thing they can do, and that's to play the game and play it well. The outcome is obviously to win. But if you address and approach your conversations the same way a professional athlete does, do you believe they'll be easier for you to prepare for? And do you believe if you prepare, you'll get better results? That's kind of an obvious question, and I'll leave you with that. So think about courageous conversations in terms of 4 buckets for a minute. They take courage. There's an incredible amount of curiosity required if you're interested. You'll become more productive, and when you are, you'll do it without judgment. And you'll become more productive if you eliminate judgment from all of your conversations. We'll talk about that too. And leaders, I've already mentioned you. If you really want to grow as a leader, this webinar and things like this are going to be essential for you to really go to the next step. I know because I coach hundreds of people every year, and I hear, I can't, I'm not sure, I think. We need to be courageous with our word and understand the reason why some of our presentations, some of our conversations aren't going well. So I want to help you eliminate the obstacles and get the tools to you so you can immediately start to engage with your team, with your spouse, with your kids, if you're a teacher, with your students, and certainly leaders with your followers. So I want to be very, very clear. Having courage does not mean eliminating fear. It simply means lean into the courage you need in order to have a productive and a courageous conversation. Understanding fear is there is important, but again, I would ask you, if you're fearful of something, it's something that goes back to your earlier days, something the way you were raised perhaps, an insecurity that you have, and all of that is out of my wheelhouse. But what I am asking you to do is, when your heart is in something and your head is in something and you have the courage to show up that way, people are going to receive you in a much, much different way. Curiosity is something that comes up in all of my servant leadership podcasts about one of the top 5 qualities of great leaders. Yes, lead by example, say what you mean, and be engaged and everything else. But being curious with your questions and authentically curious about where the other person is coming from, incredibly important. And I have not met a leader yet who doesn't say, I want to be more productive. He or she says, I want my team to be more productive. They may say things like, I want to increase my results. I want to have better results. But ultimately, this webinar will help you become more productive, not only with your time, but your word and your relationships. And leaders, how are you building the team around you? What example are you being? Let's find out. Is the real challenge to a productive conversation and a courageous conversation is you tell yourself you don't have time, you don't have the space in your schedule, you don't have the skill or the know-how? All of those are possible. So if you know that those things aren't something that you are good at, then I ask you, what is the real challenge? Perhaps the real challenge is you don't truly care about the conversations, therefore you don't prepare. You just show up and you wing it. Or you don't really want to practice because you think they're important, but you don't believe they are. I coach in the world of distinctions, and I just gave you a jewel. I think versus I believe. When you think something, you're just really participating in conversation. I have a whole nother conversation on this, where you are saying what you believe somebody else wants you to say. So I think this, I think that. My ask is that you start using the phrase, I believe. I know it'll be odd for some of you because we're just used to saying, I think, I think, I think. Listen to the radio, watch TV, the pundits, the politicians. They're always throwing out their opinion with the I think. Well, if you're not sure, then certainly don't say I believe. But wouldn't it be nice to not say anything versus just to keep saying I think? How does this play into courageous conversations? Great question. I believe meeting you today is important. I believe us seeking agreement on whether or not you're going to pick up the tab next time or not. I believe you showing up on time is important. All of those things, if they're true for you, then why start out with I think? One distinction, one jewel. Hopefully you've taken it down. A couple of weeks ago at a leadership retreat I was facilitating, it was amazing how many people didn't think about that distinction and how powerful it would be if they said less, listened better, and actually said, I believe. And even better, someone raised their hand and said, what happens if we say, I know? Well, then you know it. You don't think it. Part of the conversation you'll have with yourself is, do you believe this relationship is important? I doubt you're going to stare yourself in the mirror and say, I think I really need for this important relationship to know. You know it is because you can see it in your own eyes. You believe what you believe. So speak it. Let's look at this loving couple. Having a romantic coffee prior to going to work, perhaps. Maybe it's a team, 2 team members. Both of them are thoroughly engaged, ready to tackle the conversation. Or perhaps it's a boyfriend or girlfriend or a newly wedded couple planning for vacation, and they're busily, trying to find it. It could be. My guess is this is like a lot of us. We show up at coffee. We say this conversation is important, but yet we're on our phones. We're going to talk about listening. We're going to talk about eye contact as well, of course. But don't be these people. If you want to have a courageous conversation, your iPhone or your Android or your laptop isn't going to communicate for you. It comes from here, it comes from here, and then ultimately you speak the words that you believe are true. So what this webinar is for is to get you prepared, get you to show up wherever it is you want to have these courageous conversations, and literally lean in and say to the other person what's important. Because most of us haven't gotten there yet. And I don't care if you're 32, 42, 52, or 62, this is a pervasive problem in our country. It's a pervasive problem in schools. It's a pervasive problem when we go out to dinner with our family. And dare I say it's an issue with you at home when you're carrying around your phone and you're pretending to be present. Trust me, these two people are not having a courageous conversation. So what do? Do we procrastinate? Do we avoid the hard conversations? Do we need more? Or would you like more communication in your relationships? And if so, how do you improve it? And then here's my favorite. Do you delegate a difficult conversation to somebody else? As simple as, hey, would you go tell your little brother that he's not going to be able to sign up for flag football this year? Or would you go tell mom that I'm not able to mow the yard? Or worse, in your relationships at work. Leader says to supervisor, go tell Samantha that this is, well, that's delegating. Now, you're right. This person may report to this person, but you know the conversation between you and this person is the one you need to have. Take out this person and have it. Or include them, but make sure that you're the one communicating and not delegating the responsibility to this person. A, because you really don't care. You're not prepared. And so you're going to dump it on this person. So why do we struggle with courageous conversations? And I will guarantee you, most of the people I coach say, I'm not ready. They're ready, but I'm not ready. Well, how do you get ready? Put it on your calendar. Put it on your calendar to practice. Make it a priority. And ask yourself, is this relationship important to me? And if it is, you will show up differently and you will show up prepared. If you don't want to improve the relationships that are in your life, this is going to be a waste of time for you. I can guarantee it. And I say that with all seriousness. And please, if you have an important conversation with somebody else in your life, handle it yourself and see how you feel afterwards. Now, there are some outcomes from courageous conversations you're not going to like. They're not all going to go well. But do you win every game? Do you win every award? Are you the top producer every year? No. So take it in stride. All I'm here to do is to give you the tools to participate more intentionally in your conversations. Shifts. I have an ask. And this ask is, will you look at these 3 shifts that I'm asking you to consider, changes, shifts, whatever works for you. Which of these do you believe you struggle with the most and why? Is it your language? Is it the way you listen? You're too emotional, or you allow emotions to get in it? Or is it empathy? One I struggle with is empathy. One of my 5 principles is actually humility. And I know as a leader, I know as a man, I know as a partner, that when I'm not humble and I don't come from a place of empathy, the conversation's not going to go well. I can sit here and tell you 2 or 3 of them I've had in the last week with people that are very important to me in my life. And when you're not trying to see where the other person is coming from, it's almost impossible to have a successful conversation, especially when you think you're right. And I do that a lot. I'm working on it. And I ask you to work on it too, because again, when we come from a place of I want to know where someone else is coming from, empathy, you'll have better conversations. So which one of these do you struggle with? And which one of these are you really good at? Because if we can shift in all 4 of these areas, you will master the area of courageous conversations. There's no doubt in my mind, and there's no doubt in my heart. So the next question is this: what if? What if you made these shifts? I would tell you you're going to be more confident. You'll seek more agreements. You'll improve your relationships. You'll have easier conflict resolution. And again, there's that productivity word. A lot of people don't have the confidence to have the conversations that we're talking about. But as you get there and you make some of these shifts and you become more curious, things we're going to talk about over the hour, you will have more confidence. And when you are more confident, you lean in better. You sound like you really mean what you're saying. Your kids, your partner, your students, your followers will appreciate it. And at the end of the day, at teammate, leader, aren't we out there to seek more agreement ultimately? And what's the opposite of agreement? Non-agreement or argument or whatever. And think about your true and valuable relationships. Where are you literally intentionally seeking agreement? With the intention to say, after this conversation, I want us to come to an agreement so both of us are going to achieve what it is we want. We've already talked about relationships. Conflict resolution is a big issue for us out there, no matter if you're red or blue or D or R or whatever your background is, there's always conflict. So I give you these tools, I give you this webinar today so you can resolve conflict not only easier, but more swiftly. And then productivity, it's irrefutable. Then if your team is well oiled, you're communicating courageously, you're focusing on alignment and agreement, you will get more things done and you'll save time, money, and energy. And leaders, call me if you don't want to save time, money, and energy when you're working on a big project. And these are tried and true, absolutely tried and true. Let me introduce you to the shifts. Here's my favorite. Seriously, it is. And my youngest is 10. He is entering his second year in the University of Humility. And we had this conversation just yesterday. And we asked, what can you do? What can we all do? But his turn was up. And to help this family get better. How can we be better for one another? How can we be more kind and considerate? And he's working on humility. And the first thing he said was, I can be better with humility and I can not make it all about myself. Not bad for a 10-year-old. And frankly, he's looking at the 58-year-old father and saying, you probably need to work on this too, Dad. And of course I do. I've already admitted that. But what is the empathy? What is the reason empathy might be important to you? Or what is the reason you're not practicing empathy on a regular basis? Because you're all about yourself. You're all about winning. You don't really care where the other person's coming from. You say you do, but you don't based on your actions. And you don't really understand what being humble is. Write this one down. You report it back to someone that you love, care for, or you want to be honest with. When is the first time you ate your first piece of humble pie? You fell off that proverbial horse, or you just realized, I'm not everything I said I was, or I'm not the person I thought I was, or I can't really maintain this level of bullshit, whatever it is for you. I know you've fallen off the horse before, and I know you've eaten humble pie. So the question is, when did you eat your first piece of humble pie, and how did it taste? Because if you're not eating it on a regular basis, you're not going to believe that it's good tasting stuff, and it is. Trust me. This is one that you really, really want to get your head around and ask yourself, how can I be more empathic? How can I act with more empathy and let people know that it's important to me? If you follow my stuff at all, you recognize that servant leadership, or being of service to others first and then leading, definition of servant leadership, is critically important to me. And I be it at home, I be it at work, I be it on stage, and I'm being it for you right now. And this is a conversation that you might want to consider modeling. Regardless of what's going on between them, would you agree that the phones are down, the eye contact is out of this world, somebody's really enjoying the conversation, and regardless of what his or her intentions are for this meeting, I just want you to picture that versus the one we saw earlier. Who are you in these pictures? Who do you not want to be anymore? And could you listen with more empathy? Could you speak with more humility? That's shift one. Give it some thought. I know you can do it. Shift two is about language. I'm all about language, behavior, and relationships. And because before we can behave, we need to understand where our language is coming from. And most of it comes from our beliefs that were formed many, many, many years ago. But what we say, like people who always say, it's like, they're nervous. Either that or they just stop realizing that talking like a 14-year-old as an adult isn't cool. It's like, you just let it go. Choose language that is going to be intentional and correct in the moment. And when you're making presentations as a leader, what language are you using to make your point? Think about that. Think about the language that we choose because we want other people to hear our words. Back to my distinction of I believe versus I think. Leave I think where it belongs. That's wherever you want to put it. But start trying to say I believe. And when you are, you will actually show up as a credible individual, a credible leader, someone somebody wants to follow. People don't leave jobs, they leave their managers. And whoever wrote that is absolutely correct. But I want to replace manager with leader. Part of the reason why people leave managers is because they're managing. They have this language about I'm better. I need to tell you what to do. And I introduce this guy to you. Is this you? Have you worked for this person? Have you become this person? Man or woman, you get the point. Look at the questions he's asking. It's all expectation based. It's all I blame you. And maybe he's under stress. I don't care. This is never a way to talk to or speak to or behave with another human being. But look at his questions. What is the problem? Who is responsible for this? I want some buts kind of an action, right? That's just not leadership. And I dare say this guy's not even a manager. Then who is leading this team? Well, to this person, I would ask him to look in the mirror and ask yourself, how are you showing up? Because if you show up like this person on a regular basis, what do you think your team's going to believe? Your behavior and your language in this slide says, I don't care about you. I need to get the budget corrected. We need to make more money. We need to make more sales. We need to save time. Whatever his BS is. As you all know, this is not the way to show up. I give you these examples so you can see this is you at times. And here's where it really hurts. You believe it's okay to act like this at work, and they praise you because you're a whatever. Your results are off the chart. You come home and you start doing this, and yeah, they're 4 and 6 today. But I guarantee you when they're 10 and 12, they're going to basically look at you with these eyes that say, this shit's got to stop, Dad. Lower your voice, get your finger out of my chest. Is there something you want to say? In this house, those are the conversations we have. What conversations are you having with your kids? Because you can't be a Mr. or Mrs. Great Language at work and then come home and be a you-know-what, or vice versa. Some of us are fantastic parents. We go to work and we put this asshole hat on and we become this guy. Stop. You don't have to be this person. And if you are, take a breath and walk away because you're not making a very good impression and your language absolutely sucks. Shift number 3. A lot of us are emotional creatures. We love to be emotional. We love to wear our emotions on our sleeve. And I don't know who came up with that, but that's not anything to be proud of. Being vulnerable, letting people see into you with some emotion, sure. Brene Brown made that very, very popular and honest a few years ago. But what we really want to do is understand our emotions. Where are we coming from? Why am I all flustered? Why am I all nervous? That's great to be nervous. Understand it, but just understand where you're coming from. And listen to your inner voice. What is he or she saying and why? Because what's in here is real. But when it comes out, it needs to be honest and authentic as well. So don't hide your emotions, process them. And we're going to talk about that in detail here in a bit. And a lot of you have these, well, I'm sorry I got emotional, or I'm sorry I said that. Sure, I'm sorry works. As long as it's authentic and timely and you actually mean it. A lot of us say I'm sorry just because we have nothing better to say, instead of saying, I'm sorry, the behavior I will change is. I know it sounds kind of corny, but when we ask the person if showing up this way is a little different, would that work for you? Behave as a servant leader. Think about it. If you show up wanting to serve somebody and then lead them, what would it look like? What would your kids be saying about you in the playground? What would they be saying about you when they're having play dates at another house, watching another set of parents argue, or one parent pointing at another parent? If you're that person, your kids are watching you. And if you're that leader, your followers are watching you. You don't need to be that person. This is a lot of us. We're overwhelmed. We've had a big day. Someone just dumped a big project on us when we were already overwhelmed. We have a lot going on. And yes, having these kind of days, takes a toll on us. Absolutely. But what this person could do is recognize, okay, the person that's giving me all these priorities, I need to have a courageous conversation with them because I cannot do all this. I will want to, but I cannot possibly do this. So I need to have a courageous conversation with my leader about which of these 4 things do you want to prioritize for me? I know it sounds simple, but some people can't process all of this, much less do it all, but yet they don't have the courageous conversation. They hide, they get in trouble, they dump it on another coworker, and meanwhile, the leader doesn't even know that you're having this kind of day. Now, I'm not saying that the leader needs to coddle this person, and this could be the leader who's none of their team is following, could be the whole other way around. But he or she, in this case, needs to get up, think about having a courageous conversation with someone, and take a deep breath and leave the emotions at the desk. Here's what happens. We have this ability to create emotions. We all have emotions, but what happens is when we get so emotional, we get frustrated, we do one of 2 things, and hopefully the third, but we dump it. We just yell, or we pollute the environment, whatever you want to call it. We beat up somebody with our mouth because they're the closest person to us, or worse, we take a bad day and we bring it home, or we take a bad morning and take it to work, and then we just blah on people. Why? Why do we do that? Because we can't control our emotions. We can't understand them. We don't even know what's going on. So we vomit on other people and we pollute the environment, just as it says there. You literally pollute your environment by not processing your emotions and just letting them get the best of you and just blah. Now the other one, hold it all in. I want you to think about holding it all in, or taking a beach ball and trying to suppress it under the water when you're swimming. You know how difficult that is. And at some point your arms give out, or you need to go do something else, and you have to let that beach ball go. It just comes flying out. And then nothing good is going to happen. So clearly what I'm leaning you to is process. Why am I feeling this way? Where is the negativity coming from? How can I create better energy? How can I be a better listener? What is actually going on there? You need to really ask yourself, why am I feeling this way, and how might I process it? But just be aware of what it is you're thinking about and why you're feeling the way you're feeling, and jot it down. Go for a walk. Call somebody that is going to hear your desire to be calm, and just ask them to listen, because you're going to process your emotions with them. I don't know who that person is for you, but if anybody out there needs somebody like that, give me a jingle. Be happy to listen to that and help you prepare for a conversation. Shift 4, number 4. Listen, this is my favorite one because it's so easy, and it's the most powerful shift you can make. To just shut up and listen. But listen with your eyes. Listen with your heart. Be available. Just listen. Seriously. Just hush and listen. And listen to where the other person is coming from. Why is this important to her? You're asking yourself. Help yourself understand, where is this coming from? The why is not judgment. The why is you trying to understand where is this person coming from. This is a critical shift. And if you're willing to pause, listen, ask questions if it's available to you, because some people just want you to listen, men and women alike. It used to be, well, my husband doesn't listen. The men don't listen. They always want to fix. Got it. Been there, done that. Read the book. This is about all of us being better listeners because we want to. We actually give a blank about where the other person is coming from. But if you're talking over somebody and instead of listening, only thing that's going to happen is you're just going to be going back and forth. And I've been to a lot of those coffee shops listening to these ridiculous conversations. It's amazing. Amazing to me. Active listening. What do I mean by that? Kind of to what I just said. Try and find out where this person's coming from. What are they really trying to say beyond what they're actually saying? I know that's interesting, but this person is actively listening to where she is coming from. You can see it in his eyes. You can see it in his smile. He's interested and committed to the conversation. And as you think about you as a listener, I want you to see if you can see yourself in some of these images. None of these have electronics. All of these have eye contact. All of these have empathetic faces. All of these people are letting the other person be expressive. When you listen better, you will know more. And there's a phrase I want you to write down. Talk less, listen more, lead better. It's simple. Leaders, shut up and just listen and ask better questions. And that's where this curiosity comes from I introduced earlier. Do you really care? If you are, ask questions. Be curious. Lean in. And don't do it between and have a big desk and be in front of you and somebody other person. If you notice, none of these people are, I'm ready to listen, sitting at their big desk. Talk to me, Gina. Talk to me, Greg. No, you get that barrier out of your way and have a real conversation and listen with ease. It's incredible how easy this is and how powerful it is. And if you don't like this guy, hang up right now. But the Dalai Lama says it best. When you talk, you are only repeating what you already know. But when you listen, you may learn something new. And wouldn't it be nice if you came home and shared with your kids and your spouse, here's what I learned today. Leaders don't do that. We're grown-ups. That's what our kids are supposed to do. Hey, son, what'd you learn today? How about if you started the conversation at dinner? Here's what I learned today. And dad's going to be getting these looks probably for the first few dinners because he's not shown up this way. Mom's not shown up this way. In fact, mom likes to show as she's eating. Yeah, let me tell you what something went on today. Who wants to have this at the dinner table? But you're doing it. You're walking in the door with this in your hand, pretending to listen. Stop it. Put the phone down. Finish your crap in your car. When you walk in, be a leader. Same thing when you go to work. Don't be walking through the cubes of all these really important people by walking by offices and you've got your phone in your face. It's ridiculous. You can, but don't call yourself a leader. Not on my watch. You're not a leader if you're walking around not listening well. Learn something new and then share it at a meeting. Share it at a dinner table. What did you learn today? Your kids are listening. Your followers are listening. Give them an opportunity to hear what it is you learn. If we communicate more powerfully and if we listen better, you will get to agreement. And to me, agreement is the absolute end of all. We want to get to an agreement with the person that we're having a conversation with. Remember, the courageous conversation. The reason you're here ultimately, we don't want to just satisfy ourselves with, okay, it's kind of I see where you're coming from and I'm just going to cave. No, I agree to show up better. I agree to work harder. I agree to stop, sending you things at the last minute. I agree to stop telling you that you don't look good and that whatever. And again, these are real conversations with real people, but you need to have great courage. And when you do, you'll seek agreement more often. I promise you. And that's where it's at. A whole nother webinar, but it's not about expectation. You can expect things all your life and you're going to get two results. They'll either be met or they're not. Okay, they're met and they're not and you're pissed off. But agreement means both parties or all three, depending on who's in the conversation, agree to do something. Do what, on time, and by whom? Again, another webinar, but think about how important agreement is and how many people are walking around as we speak lacking agreement because they don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to ask for an agreement or agree to agree. So just to wrap this little section, when you make these shifts that we've talked about, you'll be more confident. You'll create agreements, as we just said. Conflicts will be resolved more readily. You'll be more productive. You'll improve those critical relationships that you said were important. But more importantly, in my opinion, peace of mind. I've been worrying about this conversation for weeks. I prepared. I used the tools Greg Aden gave me. And I went in and I met with my leader, or I met with my spouse, or I met with my kids. I met with my neighbor, whatever it is. It's over. I don't have it on my to-do list anymore. We have an agreement. We're going to behave differently, etc. But I have peace of mind. You tell me that peace of mind isn't valuable to you. Please, we know it is. Greta, time for a few questions, if you have any, and if you are, let me have them.
Yep, we have a couple of them. One is going back to shift number 2, talking about language. So the question is part of using language properly slowing down or not being afraid of silence?
Great question. The language that you want to use is what's in your heart. But it's also about taking a pause and asking yourself, what is it that I really want to say right now? And sometimes silence is golden. We've heard that since we were little. Sometimes the best thing is to say, I need a minute. And then come up with what it is you want to say. It seems like things are going so fast when you're in a courageous or difficult conversation, but time is time. Slow down and think about the words you want to use. What's the second question, Greta?
All right, this one was direct message to me. When having a conversation with someone who usually dominates the conversation, what steps can I take to make sure my point really comes across?
I would say courageously or with courage, someone who typically dominates the conversation, you've allowed that. So I want you to look internally and ask yourself, why are you allowing this person to dominate you? Because that's what's going on. It's not just the conversation. So when you start, ask. And I'm just going to say Bill and Lisa for a minute. Bill seems to dominate. Lisa says, before we have this conversation, Bill, I'm going to ask you a huge favor. Would you please just listen? And don't make him wrong for his previous transgressions. I know you want to, but again, making him wrong isn't going to help you. Just ask him if he would mind listening until you ask him a question. I know it takes courage, but do it at home, do it at work. No one should dominate anybody, frankly. Thank you, Greta.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg.
All right. I promised tools, and here they come. There's 3 of them. And when you understand all 3, you are really ready to have strong, courageous conversations. And the tools are straightforward. I'll go through all of them. One is the ladder of inference. One is knowing your triggers. And then the other one, the best one, is to focus on interest. And I'll show them all to you here in a second. So ladder of inference basically says there's this huge pool of data out there. Google, everything else you can imagine, or pool of data that you've been familiar with ever since you were little. but your pool gets bigger. It's just impossible not to have it get bigger. But what happens is, in order for us to support our belief system, we go to the same select data all the time. And we say to ourselves, I'm going to bring this up again so that my beliefs are supported. I'm going to make these assumptions. I'm going to make these conclusions so it supports my beliefs. And these are the actions I'm going to take. The same picture over and over and over because you're unaware or disinterested to look at the broader picture. And sometimes when I'm speaking to a group, I'm in a ballroom and I look down at the carpet and I use this example. There's all these patterns, gold, red, whatever, squares, diamonds, and typically we're looking at one square or one diamond or one color because that data, so our selective data, supports our beliefs. And therefore, we make assumptions, we come to conclusions, so our beliefs are supported because no one wants to look wrong. So we just complete this loop, and it's unending. But it's unsatisfying because no one's growing, including you. And then look at the action. Look at the actions that you're taking. It's limited at the top. Okay? All this data available to you, but we continue to go back to things that are supportive of our beliefs. Take a peek at this picture and let me know what you see. Pretty obvious, it's a parrot set on top of a stump. But if you look closely, you give your eyes an opportunity to truly examine what that photograph could be. You select different data, you select a different image, so then you can talk about the gymnast sitting on top of that in an amazing pose. It just happens to look like a parrot. And I hope you saw it. Hope you had a chance to see it. In the ladder of inference, it's really important to make our thinking visible to others. So you share, here's what I believe. Now notice I didn't say, here's what I think. Seriously. Because when you say, here's what I think, you're watered down, you're leaking integrity, and you're just participating. But also inquire. Inquire as to what the other person is thinking. We're trying to seek agreement here. So here's what I believe is true. Here's what I believe we might do. Bill's listening. Lisa's communicating. And then Lisa gave Bill some direction and said, hey, help me understand, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Help me understand your thinking, Lisa says to Bill. And Bill goes, oh, she's asked me a question. Now I can choose. Now I can talk. But if we understand where the different data points are coming from and stop being a narrow-minded individual, there's a whole pool of opportunity out there. So you want to be the person who brings in the possibility into the conversation. Because like the example of being dominant, that person is always going to dominate you if you let them. But encourage him or her to think about it in a different way. There's facts. What's out there, what can we both see, it's observable, the assumptions, and what are your assumptions? What did you assume as you were preparing for the conversation? And if you assume, you all know what that means, okay? I'm not going to go there. But as a beautiful woman now in my life reminded me when we first met, because I was judgmental, and I continue to struggle with that, and I know some of you do as well, but she asked me, what if you assume the best in people? And you just listened and you believed, and where they're coming from is a good place. Huge to let go of assumptions. And most of the time when we assume and we're negative, it's because of our own crap that we haven't dealt with. Jealousy, insecurity, being competitive, being judgmental. And so we bring all that garbage to the conversation and nothing's going to get done. Stop assuming, stop judging, and think about, is this person capable of being better than I thought they were? And just listen. And the unknown, and this is where those questions come in. You really want to ask the best questions you possibly can to get to the root of what's going on. And when you lean in, again, I've said lean in a lot, because literally when your heart leans in and you lean into the conversation, you get a little closer and you show this person that being vulnerable right now is going to be hard for me, but I'm going to do it because this relationship means something to me. Say it. Just say that the relationship is important. Now, if they decide that you're not important, guess what? You get to choose out of the relationship yourself. And I'm not saying just dating. I'm talking about work. I'm talking about teammates. I'm talking about the wrong leader, the wrong follower. All of this stuff is about life. It's about having better, more fulfilling relationships. Because what happens is when we assume and we're judgy and we show up, read this one. She's perfect. Just ask her. Leaders, you're not. You never will be, but you can certainly strive to become better. And today is all about being better with your word. Now let's pretend for a second your pool of data is now being looked at differently. You're still selecting data, but look at the action. The actions are now more fulfilling. It's not so tight at the top. There's more options to you to act differently because you don't have to just support your beliefs. You're coming from a place of what else is available and ask those questions. The second tool is probably the most important relative to how we show up in the world. We all get triggered. It's impossible not to go through a whole week and not get triggered by something. Even if you're positive intelligence or emotionally intelligent or you're reading all the right books, at some point something triggers you. And all I want you to think about right now is, what is it that triggers you? What are some of the common triggers that you encounter on a regular basis? Because understanding what those are will be critical to you. And this slide right here really should say, caution, triggers ahead, or caution, trigger danger, or something like that. Because we know this light is flashing, this sign is flashing that, hey, Greg, you're getting triggered. But you keep on pushing. You keep on going. You get on that edge, and then all of a sudden the conversation goes absolutely sideways, and you're falling off this cliff, and you're flipping someone off as you're falling down. Or you push them off the cliff because you got so triggered and so angry. And I don't mean physically, of course, but with your language. So what triggers you? All right, I'm gonna go through these relatively rapidly here. When you're triggered, these are some of the signs you might encounter. And just align with some of these and own them. Because when you know what triggers you and you're aware of them, you can then remove them. You can literally say, I do not wish to be triggered. I can feel my body. I can feel my heart racing. Whatever it is for you. And this one here is a very common one. Slow down. Listen. Take a pause. And if you're triggered, I love this. Raise up your hand and say, you know what, honey? You know what, son? You know what, boss? Whatever you call the person in front of you. I need a minute. I'll be right back. And what are they going to do? Yell at you and tell you to get back here and finish this courageous conversation, one that they're not engaging in very well? If they don't love you or appreciate you or respect you enough to let you have a minute or two or three, or it might even be, you know what, this is going so horribly, Bill. I really wanted you to show up differently. I asked you to listen and you weren't. I'm getting triggered and it's not going to go well. Let's reschedule. Ladies and gentlemen, you can say whatever you want. There's no ruler in front of you. There's no manager in front of you. If that person is a leader, then they will understand. If they're trying to elevate you in some way to be somebody that you want to be, they will understand. And if you're the leader, Bill, if you're the leader, Lisa, in this case, and you are, it's okay to walk away. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be that strong person all the time. And there's my favorite. I know when I'm becoming judgmental, I've been triggered. It happens. So build awareness, know your triggers, understand when you have those physical signs, and recognize in the moment. The key words there is in the moment when you're triggered, and understand why. And it's okay. You may not understand why, but do your best to jot them down after you get done with your conversation or when you get home or whatever it is for you. Why was I triggered at work? How did this happen? Now, I'm not talking about just driving down I-25. Some of you know exactly what I'm saying. You can't wait to get 16 feet in front of the other person, or the other person in back of you can't wait to get 16 feet in front of you. So and then as soon as they do, you look at them like your eyes are actually going to make their car go off the road or something. It doesn't happen. But we're triggered just because people don't know how to drive. Well, it's probably something in you. And if you let those kind of things focus on you, it's really something that is your old stuff is showing up. I guarantee you it's something you have not resolved. And your behavioral problems kick in. But I guarantee you that these are probably not the behavioral patterns you want to keep with you and move forward into any real relationships that you say are important. Listen to my language. Relationships that you said were important to you. Relationships and opportunities that you said you wanted. If that's true for you, that you need to behave in a way that is going to bring these relationships to fruition, these opportunities to fruition. But you can't get anywhere without other people. And somewhere in there, you're going to need to prepare for a conversation that is going to take courage. And that's what I'm sharing with you today. And being triggered is only going to derail you and the conversation. Slow down. And you can literally say, I'm not going to allow her to trigger me. I can honestly say, you can make your brain will shift in a way that will be more understanding, more empathetic, if you want it to. There's opportunities up there that you have no idea exist. But all you have to do is take a pause, breathe, think about something. Perhaps it's a picture of you when you were 6 or 8 or whatever, or looking at a picture of when you and your spouse were happy. Maybe not the wedding day, maybe recently. I don't know what it is for you, but you can slow down and rewire the way you react to things if you want to. If you have a phone around you, I would highly recommend you take a picture of this slide, or you can just go to the recording of this if you choose to listen to it again. But Viktor Frankl is one of my favorites, and he said this: between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom and our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our happiness. We don't have to bark back. We don't have to be better. We don't have to elevate. We don't have to talk when someone else is talking. But we have a choice. We choose how we're going to respond. Practice that. Practice owning that space. Be a better listener, be a better leader, be a better communicator by simply taking a breath and choosing how you're going to respond. You have the power. Number 3 tool is interests. Okay? What you want to see in this is there's really 3 things going on. There's the issue, which is the matter in dispute, perhaps. There's the stance you're taking and the other person is taking. Okay, so here's the issue. Her stance is I'm not moving, or her stance is she's not moving, whatever it is. Or I'm not going to pay you more, or you're not going to take less, whatever the position is. But here over here is interest, an underlying need or concern. And I say need or concern because at this point in the conversation or this point in the relationships, this is an interest of need and want and concern. So you need to understand where that person is coming from. And that's not easy. But when you understand the difference between an issue, the position, and the interest, and you think about it this way, and this is easy because we all have been there, either as the recipient or the leader. It's an argument about overtime pay. That's the issue. Okay, let's set up a time to talk about the overtime pay. I just had this conversation 2 weeks ago with someone that was in the leadership retreat. It was this very issue. And it really was very similar because the person who was leading this person who was abusing the hours She wanted to get to overtime so she could get paid more. But ultimately, she wasn't spending her time wisely. So the position was, on one, I want to get paid more, and the position on the other side was, you need to spend your time more wisely. Therefore, you can get to overtime every once in a while, but you're there all the time. And then what it actually turned out to be is she just wanted to be seen in a different way. I just want to be treated fairly. So it wasn't really about money. It was about doing the things that got her the respect and the recognition that was important to her. And you cannot do that when you are not seeing where the other person is coming from. So I want you to close your eyes and envision a beach ball. We've all had them, little plastic ones. They have 4 colors on them typically. And let's just go back to Bill and Lisa. Bill is sitting there with the beach ball and he's looking at blue and green. Lisa is looking at yellow and red. So it's impossible to understand where Bill is coming from when he doesn't even care about where Lisa might be coming from, because we're going to sit there and continue to own our position. We don't care enough about the interest. But when we do this, and Lisa shows where she's coming from, and we care enough to ask her where she's coming from and understand why these are important to her, you also get to show her where you're coming from. And then there's this huge aha moment. But most of us are so afraid of being wrong because we're so focused on being right. It's not sexy to be right. It's important to a relationship to be understanding, to be kind, to be considerate. Listen, slow down, and leave that person with the feeling that you see them, you hear them, you respect them, and you want them in your life. That's something you might want to take a look at. And then, as this slide indicates, this X, it's no longer about the stance. It's no longer about the issue. It's no longer about the position. It's about what's important to both parties. It's never going to be perfect. And this might even be exaggerated as far as the space, but that's the commonality of our two opportunities. If you focus there, you'll get more out of your conversations. Those are the 3 tools. So if you accepted some of what I was saying today, some of it sunk in, some of it you might want to have to go back and revisit, look at your workbook, understand where you're coming from and why you don't listen better, all of those questions. But if you were to work on this, where would it position you? Higher engagement, more clarity around your conversations. You know, I coach a lot of different people in different areas and different titles, and some of them focus or struggle just to present their point to a committee that needs to approve their deal or approve their loan amount, whatever it is. And clarity in your conversation, clarity with your words, speaking clearly and powerfully is going to come to you if you practice some of this. Listening, I believe we've talked about enough, and then curiosity. I plead with you to lean in and be more curious with your conversations, especially your kids. Ask those really wonderful open-ended questions to find out where it is they're coming from. And it might not be what they're eating. It might be when they're eating. I mean, little things. But if you don't ask, you won't know. Recap of the 4 shifts. Please be more empathetic. It comes from one of my 5 principles, and that's practicing humility. Be humble, eat humble pie, get it to where you like it because it's fun to see where someone else is coming from. Language is a choice. Do you want to be a victim or do you want to be an owner? Own your words, say what you mean, stop saying I think. Please start playing with this phrase, I believe, and then what comes out of your mouth is most likely going to be true. And when we're true with other people, we build trust, courageous conversations go better. Emotion, don't hide them. Don't suppress them. Own them. Understand where they're coming from. And let someone know, I'm starting to get emotional. I might need a minute. But don't rage at people. Don't dump on people. And don't hold it in to where it explodes in the wrong environment. And again, use a visual there if you want. And listen, listen, listen. And listen with ease. Listen with your eyes too. It's a beautiful thing. I don't mean to stare at people all the time. But when they're talking, your eyes should be on them, not your phone, not the TV, and not the sports page. Recap of shifts. Again, very, very straightforward. Behave in a different way if you want to. You'll get more out of your relationships. Become more aware. Understand your emotions and listen and to understand. Here are the recap of our tools. And again, all this is going to be on the recording for you to go back and do it. Find out where you are in this ladder. And are you going to have actions that come from a different pool? Then you need to go to that pool. Know what triggers you, we've talked about. And then, like we just got done saying, focus on your interests. In my opinion, if you put some of this into play, your possibilities are endless. When you acknowledge and own your emotions, you'll actually be a more powerful person, a better dad, a better mom, a better teacher, a better nurse, a better leader for sure. And that's why you're here. And one thing you need to ask yourself, and I just had two really powerful women on my Servant Leadership podcast, Dr. Monica Mallet and Dorothy Andreas. And then we were talking about the power of telling stories. But in this case, telling stories that are true. So are you telling a story just so you can get what you want, or are you actually sharing the truth? And if you're telling a story that no longer serves you or the relationship, stop. Create a new story, but please tell the truth. Triggers happen. Self-awareness of those are incredible. And we've mentioned listening with your eyes too. So I have a way to help you prepare for your courageous conversation. It's a self-review about the feelings, the ladder, the triggers, where you're focusing on, making sure to remind you to focus on what's important to both parties. So I can help you prepare for this. If you want help preparing for difficult conversation, see me afterwards or send me a note at greg@adenleadership.com, or you can go to the website and set up a time to speak with me. We'd be happy to listen and see what it is you're struggling with, perhaps. And then the preparation for the conversation, to what I said in the very beginning. You play like you practice. If you don't prepare for the conversation, then don't believe it's going to go well, because it's not. You'll probably get the same result with the same person about the same topic. But if you shift, you change the way you're looking at things, prepare in a different way, you'll have more success. It's just irrefutable. And there's some questions for you. Again, all of this is available to you if you want to go back and see the recording, or if you want to engage with me. I'd love to meet some of you out there in that way, help you prepare for conversations that will serve you and your relationship. You'll feel more confident and have peace of mind, and that's what I want for you. Greta, any additional questions at this time?
Yes, we have a few of them. Okay. The first one is, how can I create a workplace culture where courageous conversations can happen naturally?
Easy. Leaders, example it. In your one-on-one meetings with your teammates, and hopefully, or your team members, your followers, and even parents, if you're listening, set time to have these conversations, but example it. Show up more courageous. Show up on time. Get that desk out between you and the other person. If you want to lead and create a culture of courageous conversations without even using the words, simply be it. Example this kind of leadership. Ask more questions. Be more curious. And I don't mean to just say be humble is going to fix everything, but as you're walking from one place of the office to another, share with people that you show that you really care. It's easy. Make eye contact. Stop and ask questions. Now, that might be odd in first, but your culture will change as you change. If you shift, people are watching you. Ladies and gentlemen, you already know this, but I'm going to tell you because it's something we forget. Leaders, everyone's watching you. You make the culture. You create the culture with their help, of course. But they're not always listening to you. But they're watching you. How are you behaving? Build a culture that everyone wants. And when you have that next meeting with the individual or the team, ask them, how's the culture around here? How is the vibe? May not answer right away, but then offer this. Here's what I've been thinking. I'd like to share an idea with you to improve the culture, improve the environment, and then just be courageous and throw it out there. Now, they may not like it, but you know what? You're not the boss. You're a leader. Take the feedback. What's up next, Greta?
All right. I have extreme anxiety about having a conversation with my supervisor about an issue that is really bothering me. I fear that if I have the conversation and it doesn't go well, it'll cause even more issues for me in the workplace. Do you have any suggestions or feedback on that?
Well, the first one I've mentioned for the last hour, and that's prepare. Prepare for your conversation. Practice with somebody else, perhaps. And again, to the Bill and Lisa example, you need to ask this person that is providing anxiety in your life, in your relationship, to give you an opportunity to finish what it is you want to say first, and then ask her if she will have any questions afterwards. Anxiety, fear, all of those words are really something that we own. So if you're anxious, you're afraid, you're intimidated, it's not the person as much as it is you. You need to ask yourself, why am I fearful? Why am I anxious? And why don't I want to have this conversation? Find out what's going on inside you and something in the past you haven't cleaned up. That'll actually help. But I would say, in short, ask the person to listen. Say, this isn't easy for me, and I want you to give me my opportunity to share with what is in my heart or in my mind, whatever feels best to you. Anything else?
Yeah, we have one more. What's a good way to help or encourage people who are leaders over us to listen more and talk less without coming across as insubordinate or disrespectful?
Beautiful question. Think about your relationship at home. Think about your kids. How would you want them to feel about you leading? And I don't know that insubordinate is, it's prevalent, but I don't know that it exists as much as it used to. But again, I would say to that person, ask the person that you're having a conversation with if they're really willing to be true and honest with one another. And I believe when you're curious and you ask questions of them, it will actually take care of some of the, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, leader, but I'd like for you to ask me some questions about where I'm coming from. But again, in that one, I would ask, is the person intimidating you, or is the topic intimidating you? So if that's it, thank you all for attending. I appreciate it. I love this webinar. It's incredibly important to our relationships out there, as I've mentioned many times. If you have anything you want to share with me, there's my email, greg@adenleadership.com. Go to the website, and as Greta mentioned, we have a huge conference coming up. It's going to be in person in Arvada for those of you that live in Denver, and it's also going to be live streamed. We hope to have a little over 3,000 people on this year. We have a whole host of great speakers in that one. So with that, thank you for attending. Go out and communicate courageously, own who you are, listen better, practice empathy, and have fun with your conversations, especially with the ones at home. Even if your teenagers are difficult, slow them down. Ask them to put down the phone and just look in their eye and share what it is you want to know. And I bet you their behavior will change if you change yours. Be an example. God bless.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.